Back in December of 2022, out near the Oregon Cascades, I was 47 and working a ranger station nobody else wanted. My name's Owen, and I'd been doing this job for 25 years without seeing anything I couldn't explain. That changed on December 19th. A news drone flying over the wilderness near Crater Lake captured something that shouldn't exist. Bigfoot, walking across a snowy ridge in broad daylight, clear as anything I'd ever seen. The footage leaked 3 days later. Within a week, it was everywhere: national news, government hearings, emergency Forest Service lockdowns. They tried to bury it. They tried to say it was a hoax. But I was there. I saw what happened after. I know what they're hiding. I've got my own footage now, and it proves everything. They told me to stay quiet. I'm done staying quiet. This is what really happened. That December started like any other winter rotation at the North Crater Station. 3 miles from the nearest plowed road, buried under 5 feet of snow, surrounded by Douglas fir and hemlock that stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. I'd wake before dawn, check weather sensors, log snow depth, make coffee on the propane stove, while my wife Clara slept in. She'd moved out from Portland 2 months earlier, hating every minute of the isolation, but trying to make it work. The station sat at 6,400 feet elevation, right on the edge of the wilderness boundary. No cell service, satellite phone only. Radio check-ins twice a day with the main office in Medford. We were as alone as 2 people could be in the lower 48. I'd seen bears, cougars, elk herds that numbered in the hundreds. I'd tracked wolves, documented rare bird species, pulled lost hikers out of ravines. In 25 years, I'd seen everything the forest had to offer. Or so I thought. The rumors had been circulating for months. Hikers reporting strange sounds near Diamond Lake. Hunters finding tracks they couldn't identify. A trail camera near Union Creek capturing something tall and dark moving through the frame at night. The sheriff dismissed it all as Bigfoot hysteria, the kind that flares up every few years when someone wants attention. I dismissed it too. I'd heard the stories my whole career. Every rookie ranger gets told about the sightings, the legends, the supposed evidence that never amounts to anything. I figured it was just part of the culture out here, like ghost stories around a campfire. The first sign something was different came on December 12th. I was doing a routine patrol along the southern ridge when I caught a smell I didn't recognize. Not decay, not sulfur from the thermal vents, not bear musk. Something else. Wet fir and pine sap and something almost sweet, like overripe fruit. It hung in the air, thick enough to taste. I radioed it in. Dispatch said it was probably a dead elk decomposing under the snow. I logged it and moved on. That night, Clara asked if I smelled something strange around the cabin. I lied and said no. December 15th. A research team from Oregon State flew a drone over the wilderness area, documenting winter wildlife patterns for a federal grant study. Standard stuff: elk migration, snow depth analysis, thermal imaging of known wolf dens. The drone was a high-end commercial unit, stabilized camera, GPS tracking, the works. They flew the route at 1100 hours, bright sunshine, clear skies, perfect visibility. The flight plan covered 40 square miles of backcountry, including the ridge system north of Crater Lake, where I'd been patrolling. I didn't know about the flight until later. I was at the station, splitting firewood, when Clara called me inside. She'd been listening to the radio, a Forest Service emergency channel I kept running in the background, voices crackling with static, urgent but controlled. Something about recalling all field personnel, something about airspace restrictions. I switched to the main ranger frequency. Tom from Union Creek was on, his voice tight. All stations, be advised, we have a situation developing. Media drone captured anomalous footage over Sector 7. Repeat, anomalous footage. Await further instructions. Sector 7. That was my area, the ridge I'd been patrolling 3 days earlier. Within an hour, the phone calls started. Not the satellite phone. That stayed silent. But Clara's cell, which barely worked, but sometimes caught a signal if you stood on the porch. News stations, bloggers, a researcher from a Bigfoot organization in California. They all wanted to know the same thing. Had we seen it? Seen what? Clara kept asking. Nobody would tell us, just kept asking questions. Where were we on the 15th? Had we noticed anything unusual? Had we filed any strange reports? I told them all the same thing. I hadn't seen anything. That was true. I hadn't. Not yet. That evening, the footage hit the internet. Someone at the University had leaked it before the Forest Service could confiscate the files. Clara pulled it up on her laptop, the download painfully slow over our satellite connection. We watched it buffer and load, pixelated at first, then crystal clear. There, on the screen, walking across a snowy ridge maybe 2 miles from our station, a figure, massive, dark, covered in brown-black fur, moving upright, arms swinging, gait smooth and purposeful. The drone had captured 43 seconds of footage from multiple angles as it tracked the figure across the clearing before it disappeared into the trees. Bigfoot. Undeniable. Real. Walking through my forest. Clara stared at the screen. "Owen," she whispered, "that's real? That's actually real." I couldn't answer. I was too busy calculating distances. The figure had been moving east, toward our station, toward us. The footage went viral overnight. By morning, it had 30 million views. News networks picked it up. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Every major outlet ran the story. Scientists from universities across the country weighed in. Anthropologists, primatologists, zoologists. Half said it was clearly authentic, the movement patterns too complex to fake. Half said it was an obvious hoax, a person in a suit. But the researchers who knew, the ones who'd been studying Bigfoot sightings for decades, they said something different. They said this was the first clear daylight footage ever captured. They said the figure matched descriptions from thousands of reports going back 100 years. They said this changed everything. The government moved fast. By noon on the 16th, the FAA had declared a no-fly zone over the entire Crater Lake wilderness area. The Forest Service announced an immediate closure of all trails and access roads, citing avalanche danger. The Oregon State Police set up roadblocks on every route into the mountains. Official statement: the footage was under investigation for potential digital manipulation. Unauthorized entry into the closure area would result in federal charges. Unofficial reality: they were trying to bury it. I got the call at 1400 hours. My supervisor, a regional coordinator named Sarah Vance I'd never actually met in person, on the satellite phone. Her voice was clipped, professional. "Owen, we need you to evacuate the station immediately. We're pulling all personnel out of the area." "Why?" "The forecast is clear. There's no avalanche risk." "This isn't about weather. This is a security situation. You and Clara need to pack essentials and hike out to the access road. Transportation will be waiting." "What kind of security situation?" Silence. Then, "Just follow the directive, Owen. This comes from the top, way above my level." I looked at Clara. She was watching the footage again, frozen on a frame that showed the creature's face in profile. Almost human. Almost. "What if we don't want to evacuate?" I asked. "That's not optional. You have 6 hours. If you're not out by 2000 hours, we're sending a team in to extract you." She hung up. Clara turned to me. "Are they really shutting this down? They're really going to pretend this doesn't exist?" I'd worked for the federal government long enough to know the answer. "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what they're going to do." She stood up, her face set with an expression I'd never seen before. "Then we need to see it ourselves before they lock everything down. We need proof they can't take away. We didn't evacuate. I called Sarah back and told her Clara had twisted her ankle, that we needed until morning to safely make the hike out. She didn't believe me, but she couldn't prove otherwise. She gave us until 0600 the next day. That gave us 12 hours. I packed my gear, camera, night vision scope, GPS tracker, thermal binoculars. Clara wanted to come. I told her to stay at the station in case anything went wrong. She argued. I won. She agreed to. Monitor the radio and keep the doors locked. The sun was setting when I headed out, following the coordinates from the drone footage. The ridge was 2 miles northeast, uphill through deep snow. I had maybe an hour of daylight left. The temperature was dropping fast, maybe 15 degrees, and falling. My breath crystallized in the air. The forest was absolutely silent. No wind, no birds, no small animals moving through the underbrush, just my boots crunching in the snow and my own breathing. Halfway there, I smelled it again, that same scent from days before, but stronger now. Wet fur and pine, and that sweet rotting fruit smell. My heart started hammering. I stopped, listening. Nothing. I kept moving. I reached the ridge at 1830 hours, just as the last light was fading. I recognized the clearing from the drone footage, the same arrangement of trees, the same fallen log, the same slope of the terrain. I pulled out the thermal binoculars and scanned the area. Nothing. Just cold forest and snow. Then I saw the footprints, a line of them, leading from the clearing into the trees. Each print was enormous, maybe 16 inches long, pressed deep into the snow. 5 toes, a clear arch, a heel strike pattern that looked disturbingly human. I followed them, camera recording everything. The tracks led downhill into a dense stand of old-growth timber. The trees here were massive, some of them 10 feet in diameter, blocking out what little moonlight was starting to filter through. That's when I heard it. 3 knocks, wood on wood, sharp, deliberate, evenly spaced, coming from somewhere ahead. I froze. The knocks came again, 3 times. A pause, then 3 more. I knew what that meant. I'd read the reports. 3 knocks was a documented Bigfoot behavior reported by researchers across the Pacific Northwest. A warning or a signal. I called out into the dark. I'm not here to hurt you. The knocking stopped. The forest went silent again. Then, from maybe 50 yards away, a sound I'll never forget. A long, low howl that wasn't quite human and wasn't quite animal. It echoed through the trees, raising every hair on my body. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, moving away, fast. I ran after them. I shouldn't have run. I know that now. But in the moment, all I could think was, this is real. It's here, and I need proof. The footsteps crashed through the undergrowth ahead of me, breaking branches, sending up sprays of snow. I kept the camera rolling, the night vision barely penetrating the darkness. The footsteps stopped. I stopped. My lungs burned from the cold air. I swept the camera around, trying to catch anything on thermal. Movement. Heat signature. Something. There, 30 yards to my left, a shape behind a tree, massive, radiating heat like a furnace. I zoomed in. It stepped out. I've tried to describe what I saw that night. I've gone over it 1,000 times in my head. Words don't do it justice. Bigfoot? Because that's what it was. That's the only word for it. Stood at least 8.5 feet tall, covered in dark brown fur, longer around the shoulders and head. Its face was flat, with a pronounced brow ridge, wide-set eyes that reflected my camera's infrared light like a cat's. Its shoulders were broader than any human's, its arms longer, hanging down past its knees. We stared at each other. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The camera was still recording, capturing everything. Then it did something I didn't expect. It raised one hand. And it was a hand, not a paw, with a thumb and 4 fingers, and placed it against a tree trunk. It pressed deliberately, then lifted the hand away. Then it looked at me, directly at me, and made a sound. A low rumble, almost like speech. Not words I could understand, but inflected, communicative. It was trying to talk to me. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said again, my voice shaking. "I just want to understand." Bigfoot tilted its head. The gesture was so human it made my chest tighten. Then it turned and walked away. Not running, walking, calm, controlled, like it had decided I wasn't a threat. I watched it disappear into the darkness. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the camera. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just breathing, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Then I heard the helicopters. Distant at first, then louder. Multiple choppers coming from the south. Spotlights stabbing through the forest canopy. I checked my watch. 2100 hours. They weren't waiting until morning. They were coming now. I ran back toward the station, slipping in the snow, branches whipping my face. The helicopters were getting closer. I could hear voices over loudspeakers, too distorted to make out words. I could see lights sweeping through the trees. I made it back to the cabin at 2140. Clara was on the porch, watching the sky light up with searchlights. "Owen, what the hell is happening?" I held up the camera. "I got it. I got everything. We need to hide this. Right now." We pulled the SD card from the camera and hid it in a vacuum-sealed bag buried in the crawl space under the cabin. We did it fast, without speaking, both of us understanding that if the authorities found the footage, it would disappear. 10 minutes later, the helicopters were overhead. Loudspeaker. "This is the U.S. Forest Service. This area is under mandatory evacuation. Exit the structure with your hands visible. This is not a request." We came out onto the porch, 3 helicopters hovering above the clearing, spotlights turning night into day. I counted at least a dozen people in tactical gear emerging from the tree line, rifles raised. Not regular Forest Service rangers. These were federal agents, maybe FBI, maybe something else. A man in a black jacket approached, ID held up. "Special Agent Carr, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. You were ordered to evacuate 6 hours ago." "My wife was injured," I said. We needed time. He looked at Clara's ankle, clearly fine. "You're coming with us. Now! Leave everything. You'll be allowed to retrieve personal items after the area is secured." "Secured from what?" I asked. Carr didn't answer. 2 agents moved past us into the cabin. I heard them inside, opening drawers, checking closets. They weren't subtle. This was a search. "What are you looking for?" Clara demanded. "Recording devices, cameras, data storage, anything you might have used to document unauthorized activity in a restricted zone." "The zone wasn't restricted when we were here," I said. "It is now." They found my backup camera, my phone, Clara's laptop. All of it went into evidence bags. One agent asked about my main camera. I told him I'd left it at the office in Medford weeks ago. He didn't believe me, but he couldn't find it. They didn't think to check under the floorboards. They took us out on one of the helicopters, Clara and me crammed in, with 4 agents who wouldn't answer questions. We flew south, landing at a facility I didn't recognize, some kind of federal building near Klamath Falls. They separated us, put me in a small office with no windows. Agent Carr sat across from me. "You saw the footage? The drone video?" "Everyone saw it. It's all over the internet." "Did you attempt to locate the subject depicted in that footage?" "Subject? Not creature, not animal." "Subject?" "No," I lied. "Did you capture any photographs or video of the subject?" "No." He slid a tablet across the table. Satellite imagery, thermal, dated today, time-stamped 2100 hours. It showed 2 heat signatures in the forest, one human-sized, one much larger. This was taken from one of our satellites. "That's you, Owen. And that's the subject. You were within 30 yards of it. You're telling me you didn't document the encounter?" I looked him in the eye. "I went for a walk. I heard something in the woods. I came back. That's all?" He didn't believe me, but he couldn't prove otherwise. They held us for 3 days. Separate rooms, constant interviews, different agents asking the same questions in different ways. "Did you see it? Did you film it? Do you know what it is? Where it lives?" I stuck to the story. I saw nothing. I filmed nothing. I know nothing. Clara did the same. We'd agreed before they separated us. Deny everything, admit nothing, demand a lawyer if they pushed too hard. They never actually charged us with anything, so the lawyer never came. This was something else. Intimidation, containment. On the 3rd day, they showed me what they were really worried about. Agent Carr brought in a laptop and played a compilation video. News segments from around the world. The drone footage had exploded globally. Scientists demanding government transparency. Cryptozoology organizations calling for protected habitat status. Indigenous groups saying they'd been right all along. Congress announcing an emergency hearing. "You see what's happening?" Carr said. "The footage leaked before we could contain it. Now we have a situation. People are demanding proof, evidence, bodies." "You can't give them what doesn't exist," I said. He smiled. It wasn't friendly. "The subject exists, Owen. We've known that for 40 years. We have documentation going back to the 70s, hair samples, scat, thermal footage, audio recordings. We even have a partial skeleton from a specimen that died in Montana in 1993. I stared at him. "You're telling me the government has known Bigfoot is real for 40 years and kept it secret?" "Kept it protected," he corrected. "There are maybe 300 individuals left in the Pacific Northwest. They're endangered, critically. If the public knew they existed, this whole region would be overrun. Hunters, poachers, researchers. The species would be extinct within a decade." "So you hide them." "We protect them, and people like you who go looking where they shouldn't threaten everything we've built." He closed the laptop. "You're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You're going to tell anyone who asks that you saw nothing, that the footage is a hoax, that Bigfoot doesn't exist. If you violate the agreement, you'll be charged with espionage, theft of government property, and violation of the Endangered Species Act. You'll spend 20 years in federal prison. And if I refuse to sign, then we'll find a reason to keep you here, indefinitely. National security. You'd be amazed what that label can justify." I signed. So did Clara. We didn't have a choice. They released us on December 22nd, drove us back to Portland, told us to stay away from the Cascades, and left us at Clara's sister's apartment with a warning. We were being monitored. Any attempt to go public would be detected and stopped. The news cycle had already moved on. The government's official statement issued while we were detained. Shapis Parr declared the footage a sophisticated hoax created by university students as a prank. They even produced the students, actors who confessed on camera. Case closed. Public satisfied. But I knew the truth, and I had the footage hidden where they'd never find it. We couldn't go back to the station. The Forest Service offered me a transfer to California, low-elevation desk work, no field assignments. I took it. We moved to Sacramento in January. Clara got a job at a school. We tried to build something normal. But the Bigfoot researchers found us anyway. A woman named Dr. Ellen Marsh, anthropologist from Berkeley, showed up at our apartment in February. She said she'd been studying the drone footage, frame by frame. She said there were details in the video that proved it wasn't a hoax. Muscle movement patterns, gait analysis, anatomical features that couldn't be replicated with a costume. "The government is lying," she said, "and I think you know that." I told her I couldn't. Talk about it. Legal reasons? She understood, but she left me a card with an encrypted email address. "If you ever want to tell the truth," she said, "there are people who will protect you." I threw the card away. Then I dug it out of the trash and hid it in my wallet. March, April, May, life in Sacramento. Clara seemed okay, but I knew she was having nightmares. She'd wake up gasping, saying she heard the knocks again. 3 sharp raps. I heard them too sometimes, in my memory, or maybe in reality. I couldn't tell anymore. I started reviewing the footage. Late at night, when Clara was asleep, I'd pull up the SD card on my laptop with the Wi-Fi disabled, watching those 47 seconds I'd captured over and over. It was better than the drone footage. Closer, more detailed. You could see Bigfoot's face clearly, the intelligence in its eyes, the way it moved, careful, deliberate, aware. This wasn't an animal. This was something else, something that deserved to exist without being hunted or studied or turned into a media circus. But the world deserved to know the truth too, didn't they? I started documenting everything. I wrote down every detail of the encounter, the smell, the sounds, the way Bigfoot had tried to communicate, the government's interrogation, the cover-up, all of it. I encrypted the files and stored them on 3 separate drives hidden in different locations. Then I reached out to Dr. Marsh. We met in June in a coffee shop in Oakland. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on paper, no electronics. When I finished, she sat back and let out a long breath. "Owen, if you go public with this, they'll destroy you, your career, your marriage, maybe your freedom." "I know. But if you don't, they win. The truth stays buried. Bigfoot stays a myth, and the government keeps hiding one of the most important discoveries in human history." "I know that too." She slid a folder across the table. "These are contacts, journalists with encrypted channels, lawyers who specialize in whistleblower protection, scientists who will verify your footage independently. If you're serious about this, we can build a case they can't shut down." I took the folder. "How long will it take?" "To do it right? 6 months, maybe a year. We need to be careful. Strategic." "Okay," I said. "Let's do it right." Building the case took 8 months. Dr. Marsh assembled a team, 3 anthropologists, 2 wildlife biologists, a digital forensics expert, and a journalist from the Washington Post named Marcus Webb, who'd broken government cover-up stories before. We met in person only once, in a rented house in Oregon, nowhere near the Cascades. Everything else happened through encrypted channels. The forensics expert analyzed my footage frame by frame, muscle movement, gait patterns, anatomical proportions. His conclusion, either genuine or the most sophisticated costume and effects work ever created, surpassing anything in Hollywood. Given that I'd filmed it on a consumer camera in the field with no preparation, the costume theory didn't hold. The biologists compared the creature to known primates. The anatomy didn't match any existing species. The body proportions, the way it moved, the size, it was something unique. Possibly a relict population of Gigantopithecus, an extinct ape that lived in Asia until about 300,000 years ago. Except Gigantopithecus wasn't supposed to exist in North America. The anthropologists interviewed me for hours, documenting every detail. They compared my account to thousands of other Bigfoot reports dating back over a century. The consistency was striking. The 3 knocks, the smell, the vocalizations, the avoidance of humans. All of it matched patterns reported across decades and hundreds of miles. Marcus Webb worked on the government angle. He filed 4 requests, dug through declassified documents, interviewed retired forests. Service personnel. He found it. Evidence of a classified program started in 1974 called the Non-Human Primate Protection Initiative. Budget lines buried in Department of Interior spending. References to specimen monitoring and habitat preservation in internal memos. The government had been tracking Bigfoot for 50 years. By September, we were ready. Marcus had written the story. Dr. Marsh had prepared the scientific analysis. We had my footage, the forensics report, the government documents, and testimony from 3 former federal employees willing to confirm the program's existence. We planned to release everything simultaneously. The Washington Post article, the footage on YouTube, the scientific paper submitted to multiple journals, a press conference at Berkeley, hit them from every angle before they could shut it down. The publication date was set for October 15th, 2 weeks away. Then Clara got a visit. 2 men in suits showing federal credentials. They sat in our living room and told her that if the footage went public, I'd be charged with theft of government property. The SD card in my camera was technically federal equipment, and violations of the Endangered Species Act. They said I'd get 10 years minimum. They said she'd lose everything. They were polite, professional. They didn't threaten. They just laid out the consequences. Clara called me at work crying, "Owen, we can't do this. I can't lose you. Please." I sat in my car in the parking lot, phone pressed to my ear, and felt everything crumble. All those months of work, the team waiting. The truth finally ready to come out. And Clara, terrified, begging me to stop. I called Marcus that night. "I can't do it. I'm sorry." There was a long silence. Then he said, "Owen, if you back out now, this story dies. You know that, right? They win." "I know." "Is that really what you want?" I looked at Clara through the window. She was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. "No," I said, "but it's what I have to do." I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Bigfoot, standing in the forest, looking at me with those intelligent eyes, trying to communicate, trusting me enough not to run. And I thought about the government agents, so confident they could keep the truth buried, so certain that fear and threats were enough to maintain the secret. By morning, I'd made my decision. I called Marcus back. "We're going forward. Release everything." "What about Clara?" "I'll handle Clara. Just promise me you'll make this big enough they can't bury it. Not this time." "Owen, they're going to come after you." Let them arrest me on national television. Let them try to explain why they're prosecuting a ranger for filming a creature that doesn't exist. That'll just make the story bigger." He was quiet for a moment. "You're sure about this?" "I've never been more sure about anything." We moved the timeline up. October 1st, 4 a.m. Eastern Time. The Washington Post story went live on their website. Marcus had titled it, "Classified, Federal Government's 50-Year Cover-Up of North American Great Ape Species." At 4:15, Dr. Marsh posted my footage to YouTube along with the forensic analysis and scientific commentary. By 5 a.m., it had 100,000 views. At 6, 3 major networks picked up the story. By 7, it was the top trending topic on every social media platform. By 8 a.m., when the agents arrived at my apartment with an arrest warrant, there were news cameras waiting outside. They charged me with theft, disclosure of classified information, and violation of the Endangered Species Act. My lawyer, provided by Dr. Marsh's team, argued that you can't steal footage of a creature the government claims doesn't exist, and you can't violate protections for a species that isn't officially recognized. The judge set bail at $50,000. It was paid within an hour by donations from strangers on the internet. The story exploded. Within 48 hours, my footage had been viewed 200 million times. Scientists from around the world demanded access to the data. Indigenous groups held press conferences saying they'd been trying to tell people about Bigfoot for generations. Congress announced emergency hearings. The government tried to maintain the cover-up. Official statements called the footage digitally altered and my claims delusional. But Marcus had the documents, the proof, the testimony from federal employees. On October 5th, a retired Forest Service director named James Holbrook appeared on 60 Minutes. He confirmed everything, the secret program, the monitoring, the decades of evidence. He said he was coming forward because the truth mattered more than protecting a failed policy. We meant well, he said. We wanted to protect them. But we did it through lies and intimidation. That was wrong. The American people deserve to know what's in their forests. The next day, the Secretary of the Interior announced a full review of the NHPPI program. The charges against me were quietly dropped. The footage was authenticated by 3 independent laboratories. On October 12th, the President addressed the nation. He confirmed that Bigfoot, officially designated as Anthropoides giganticus, was real, endangered, and had been known to the government since 1974. He announced the creation of a protected habitat zone covering 12 million acres across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. Bigfoot was real. The world knew. Everything had changed. The first protected habitat zone went into effect on November 1st. 12 million acres, closed to all human entry except authorized researchers. The government identified 19 known Bigfoot family groups in the Pacific Northwest, with an estimated population of 340 individuals. Dr. Marsh was appointed to lead the scientific study team. She invited me to join as a field consultant. I said yes. Clara understood. This was bigger than us, bigger than our marriage even, though we were trying to hold it together. I went back to the Cascades in December, exactly 1 year after the drone footage. This time, I was part of an official expedition with permits and protocols and a team of researchers who actually believed. We set up base camp 5 miles from where I'd filmed my encounter. The area had been left completely undisturbed since the closure. No human entry, no infrastructure, just wilderness. The team wanted to use camera traps and audio recorders to study Bigfoot from a distance. I argued for direct contact, cautious, respectful, but direct. Dr. Marsh sided with me. We used the 3-knock pattern. Standing at the edge of the forest at dusk, I rapped a stick against a tree trunk 3 times, then waited. Nothing the first night, or the second. On the 3rd night, we got a response. 3 knocks, coming from the darkness beyond the tree line. Then a low vocalization, that same almost speech rumble I'd heard before. Dr. Marsh was shaking with excitement. That's communication, actual, deliberate communication. We established a pattern over the next 2 weeks. 3 knocks at dusk, 3 knocks in response. Slowly, the responses got closer. By week 3, we could see movement in the trees. On December 19th, exactly 1 year to the day, Bigfoot stepped into the clearing. Not the same individual I'd encountered before. This one was slightly smaller, maybe 7.5 feet tall, with lighter brown fur. But the intelligence in its eyes was the same. That awareness. We'd prepared for this. No sudden movements, no cameras at first, just presence. Dr. Marsh had brought gifts, apples, fish, honey. We set them on the ground and backed away. Bigfoot approached slowly. It picked up an apple, examined it, took a bite. Then it looked directly at us and made a sound. A specific vocalization repeated twice. Then it set something down on the ground and retreated back into the trees. We waited 10 minutes before approaching. What Bigfoot had left was a woven basket, intricate and beautiful, made from stripped cedar bark. Inside were stones arranged in a deliberate pattern. "It's a gift exchange," Dr. Marsh whispered. "Reciprocal communication. This is first contact. Actual first contact with another intelligent species." Over the following months, the team documented dozens of interactions, not just with one Bigfoot, but with several. They learned patterns, behaviors, social structures. The species was far more complex than anyone had imagined. Language, tool use, art, culture. Bigfoot wasn't just an undiscovered ape, it was humanity's cousin, a parallel intelligence living hidden in the forests for thousands of years. The world changed fast after the disclosure. Bigfoot went from myth to protected species overnight. Tourism to the Pacific. Northwest exploded even though the habitat zones were closed. Towns near the protected areas built entire economies around Bigfoot. Museums, research centers, educational programs. Scientific teams from 20 countries requested access to study the population. The government approved 12 projects, all with strict protocols. No invasive research, no capturing specimens, only observation and non-invasive data collection. Indigenous communities were brought into the management process. Tribal elders shared knowledge that had been passed down for generations. They had names for Bigfoot in dozens of languages: Sasquatch, Semequez, Oma. They'd known all along. I stayed with the research program for 2 years. Clara and I separated amicably. She couldn't live that life anymore, and I couldn't leave. We still talk. She's proud of what I did, even if it cost us our marriage. The footage, both the drone video and mine, became part of the Smithsonian collection. Historical evidence of the moment humanity discovered it wasn't alone. Scientists estimate it'll take decades to fully understand Bigfoot biology, behavior, and intelligence. There are still skeptics, people who say the government fabricated everything, that it's all an elaborate hoax. But the evidence is overwhelming now. Hundreds of hours of video, DNA analysis, bones, hair samples, living specimens observed by thousands of researchers. Bigfoot is real. That's just a fact now. I left the program in 2024. Too many people, too much bureaucracy, too much politics around something that should have stayed simple. I moved to a small town in Montana, near the northern edge of the habitat zone. I work part-time at a wildlife center, teaching kids about conservation. Sometimes at night, I hear the knocks. 3 sharp raps echoing from the forest. I don't know if it's real or memory or wishful thinking, but I like to think it's real. I like to think Bigfoot knows what we did, that we fought to protect them, and that they're grateful. Dr. Marsh says I'm projecting human emotions onto a non-human species. She's probably right, but I remember those eyes, that intelligence, that attempt to communicate. I don't think I'm wrong. 2 years after the disclosure, Congress passed the Non-Human Intelligence Protection Act. It extended endangered species protections to any species demonstrating tool use, symbolic communication, or cultural transmission. Bigfoot was the first species covered. Scientists are already debating whether certain whale populations and corvid species might qualify. I testified at the hearings. I told them what I saw, what I knew, what it meant. The government apologized for the cover-up. Sort of. Official statement. Previous administrations made decisions based on the best information available at the time. No one was held accountable. The classified program was declassified. History moved on. But the world is different now. We know we're not alone. We know there's another form of intelligence sharing this planet with us, living quietly in the forests, just trying to survive. And every time I hear those 3 knocks in the darkness, I smile. Because Bigfoot is out there, real, protected, free. That's what I fought for. That's what changed everything.